It seems like for every good thing Wizards of the Coast adds to their playtesting material for the 2024 edition of Dungeons & Dragons, they also end up adding a few things that actually don't make sense. As a matter of fact, you guys seem to agree in my comments. I've been going through those comments and seeing what you were talking about, taking a deeper look at that, and I want to talk about a few things that I agree with, that I'm really not happy with, or are a bit meh. Hi there fellow roleplayers and game masters. Today I want to jump right into action. The Unearthed Arcana for the expert classes for the 2024 edition of Dungeons & Dragons has been out for a few days now, and a few days ago I did a video with like kind of my first impressions and my opinions, and I'm still very excited about it, and I still think Wizards of the Coast is doing a lot of good stuff, especially in the way they are approaching it. Now there's also a way on the internet, if you post a video, that people give their opinion on it. So a lot of you have been commenting on that YouTube video with specific things in these rules that are actually not very good for certain classes, certain playstyles, and in general the flow of the game. So I want to go over a few of those points and really talk about that, because we really need to fill in that survey and band together to make D&D 2024 a really good edition. By the way, if you happen to be in Etten, just fill in the survey twice. So what I'm going to do in this video is I'm going to look at a comment, read it for you guys, and then look deeper into what it means for the game exactly. Now, if somebody comments about this and I read it for you guys, it doesn't mean that's the only comment about that particular subject. As a matter of fact, this is one of the most talked about things in my comment section. From JVC Parry, he first says, love the content, I appreciate it, thank you. But I will say, if you aren't sure what the changes are, perhaps reach out for help before recording. You are absolutely right. I was super prepared for most things, but then I end up, while recording, I end up running into things that I'm not really sure about. So I try to like say that to you guys, like I'm not really sure what happened here, so I will skip that. It's for a different video today. For example, the rogue thing is sneak attack is now only on your turn and must use the attack action. Really important. So no reaction sneak attacks anymore, and you can't sneak attack as part of booming blades. Now, that's really important stuff. I'm going to switch this off really quickly. Sneak attack for the rogue in 2024. You know how to turn a subtle attack into a deadly one. Once on each of your turns, not once per turn, but once on each of your turns. Really important wording. When you take the attack action, again, important wording, attack action, you can deal extra damage to one creature you hit with an attack roll if you're attacking with a finesse weapon, range attack, and blah, 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 blah. So basically, it's the same thing if you read it once, but then you read it again, and then it becomes something entirely different, because sneak attack used to be, if I'm not mistaken, it said something in the sense of like once per turn, which meant that you can interpret it as once on each turn, like even if it's your friend's turn, you can do it. So you can do a reaction attack. If you are able to attack as a reaction or something like that, the game allows you to do it. You can also sneak attack, which is really powerful. If in hindsight, it's super powerful, because you can sneak attack and sneak attack and sneak attack more. But the rogue kind of needs that, because the rogue is like the single target damage dealer of the group. He's an expert, so he's like the single target damage dealer, where the fighter is more like multiple targets, but the rogue is like really stabby one target. So it's really important that the rogue can do that kind of sneak attack. Now, with the crit rules being taken from the 2014 player's handbook again, you can still crit. Your sneak attack still crits, so that's kind of fixed, but it needs to be on your turn, and you need to take the attack action. Now, if you look at that once, it's like, yeah, okay, you need to take the attack action, and then if the requirements are met, you basically get to make a sneak attack. So they're trying to nerf the sneak attack, but they did it wrongly in the first playtest, and they're now doing it again, and again wrongly in my opinion, because like the comment says, I'll pop it up here on my screen quickly, you can't sneak attack as a part of Booming Blade, and this is just one example. For example, Booming Blade, I'm trying to find it here. That's not the way I want. Anyway, the Booming Blade is a cantrip, which is a spell that requires an action to cast. And that spell gives you an attack roll. You can make a melee weapon attack from that spell. But making a melee weapon attack from a spell does not count as an attack action. because you have taken a spell casting action, whatever it's called. Casting a spell is the action you take. The weapon roll, the attack roll you make is a part of that spell. It's not a part of your attack action. So if you cast Booming Blade, something, and you cast this lightsaber, when you hit somebody with it, it doesn't, like sneak attack isn't added to that, because you didn't take the attack action, which might make sense in a way that you only get like 6 seconds to do something, and you are already casting a spell, so your focus is on casting a spell, and attacking with that spell is kind of like the secondary thing, so you don't really get to focus on where to stab with that booming blade or whatever, but you actually... Like in gameplay wise, it's nerfing something that used to be very cool, but because I personally saw a lot of players use this booming blade sneak attack combination. I've always found it as a DM even, it does a lot of damage, but I always found it like really, really cool. So I hope they're kind of going to add something that allows people to do this anyway, because casting this cool spell and doing a sneak attack is something the rogue really needs. Again, the rogue is a single target damage dealer of the group. He's the expert of the group, so he needs to be able to do that single target damage, and a lot of it. So yeah, for the rest, it's still, you have an advantage on the attack roll, or somebody is adjacent to it, and you still get to, like, now you get to crit your sneak attack, but it needs to be on your turn, so it's only once per round. It's not a reaction anymore, and it's not as part of a spell that gives you an attack roll, which is kind of a shame, to be honest. The next one is for the Bard class, another expert in the expert classes playtest for 2024, and it is a comment by, I'm gonna murder this, Isaiah Welch. Anyway, my biggest issue is that bards now have to decide on using Counterspell or Bardic Inspiration, since Bardic Inspiration is now a reaction rather than a bonus action. This is a big one that I missed in my last video. It is a small word change, again, a small rule change that like looks on the surface doesn't look really important, but believe me, it is really important. Just let's take a look at this. You can supernaturally inspire others through words, music, or dance. This inspiration is represented in your Bardic Inspiration die, which is a d6, and then it becomes a d8, a d10, d12, whatever. When another creature within 60 feet of you that you can see or hear fails a d20 test, you can use your reaction to give the creature a Bardic Inspiration die. The creature rolls that die and adds the number rolled to the d20, potentially turning the failure into a success. So on the surface, this is basically the same thing. You can inspire others through words, music, dance, or whatever, to be better at something, whatever they're doing at that point in time, whatever they're attempting, you can inspire people to do better. You can also heal people immediately after another creature within 60 feet of you that you can see or hear takes damage. You can use your reaction to roll your Bardic Inspiration die and restore a number of hit points to the creature equal to the number rolled. Which also on the surface sounds really cool. Well, actually just is really cool. It makes the bard, right? But the thing is, it is now a reaction, where it used to be a bonus action. Now, I've played with a lot of bards at my table. As a dungeon master, a lot of people, like the bard is a class that always pops up every now and then. As a matter of fact, my girlfriend plays a really awesome bard, and I'm not just saying that because she's sitting right there, I'm saying that because I mean it. But something about the bard is that every time it's their turn, it goes the same way. They do some randoms, they do something crazy or something cool or something epic, and then they say, and this goes like almost every turn, 100% of the time almost, they do their thing, and then they say, as a bonus action, I give Bardic Inspiration to that person. Which is always a really cool moment, because most bards use like this special die that represents their Bardic Inspiration, or like special color or whatever, and they give that physically to another person, and that person has it sitting in front of them, and it's just sitting there waiting for them to use it within the period of time they need to use it, or whatever the rules say. Now it is a reaction. Now it's just like, oh, somebody rolls a d20 and you're like, oh, Bardic Inspiration, and then you give them a die, or they take a d6 or whatever, and they add it to the whatever thing they're doing, which is not only less cool in a sense, because that Bardic Inspiration is just really cool that you can give it to somebody and they have it sitting in front of them and just sitting there and use the DM, or also like when is that person, did he forget that he has a D6 in front of them or a D8 in front of them to use? So it's a really cool thing to have at your table. But also now that it's a reaction, the comment says now you basically have to choose, and this is just an example, on using Counterspell or Bardic Inspiration. Which makes sense because Counterspell is a reaction, so somebody casts a spell and you cast Counterspell. But you can cast Counterspell as a reaction, but that takes away one use of Bardic Inspiration. Like, you cannot use Bardic Inspiration at the point that you're using Counterspell, which is a shame, because Bardic Inspiration is something that you want to use a lot, and if you are a bard and you choose a lot of, like, spells as reactions, well, it's not smart anymore to use reaction-type spells, because you will interfere with your Bardic Inspiration, which is, it's a really weird choice from Wizards of the Coast to use Bardic Inspiration as a reaction. Now, thematically, it makes sense, because you're actually inspiring the person at that point in time, instead of like playing the violin now and an hour later somebody gets inspiration on something, which like thematically didn't make sense, but mechanically was really fun to do at your table. So thematically, I can see where they're going with this, but I just don't like it being a reaction because it takes away from spells like Counterspell, or Counterspell takes away from your Bardic Inspiration. Again, a shame. The next point is really open to interpretation, but I see a lot of people talk about it in my comment section, on my Discord, and everywhere when I look over One D&D stuff. And a comment by the same person as the previous one says, wait, WTF, why is a Warlock a mage class when you depend on a patron similar to a deity, but Druids, being the elemental caster, is somehow in the priest category, when Druids really have no deity or patron? That makes absolute no sense. Warlocks depend on an entity more powerful than they to be granted power, while a druid learns to bend and manipulate nature to their will. And I absolutely kind of agree with that. Another person says, by the name of Christopher Plummer, when first introduced, druids were a religious order based on the historical Celtic druids. So priests does make sense. So I see a lot of people saying this second thing also, but I can kind of see that people are weirded out by the class groupings. So let's look at the class groupings really quick. So they say a druid isn't like really a priest because they have no deity or whatever. They get their magic from nature, and we are guessing that once we see druids, we're going to see that they can cast from the primal spell list, we think, but now they are called priests, so they might be casting from the divine spell list. Who knows? I don't know. So stewards of divine or primal magic, so that's probably the druids, focusing on healing, utility, and defense. And a lot of people are like, wait, why is a druid a priest? That doesn't really make sense. And for me, I also think it is weird. But then I see a lot of people pointing out that the druids in Dungeons and Dragons are actually based on the Celtic stuff from like the real world, and it actually makes sense, but because they have like a greater power they believe in. There's this entire lore thing that I like quickly glanced over, but I am no expert in, but those people are actually right. The druids are based on that, so depending on what Wizards of the Coast is going to do with that lore, we're going to see them hop over to maybe the mages class or stay in the priest class. But I still think right now, for me, it's just a bit weird that they're called priests. Maybe they just should rename the group priest to something else. I don't know what I'm not an expert, but just to something else. But priest for me is like a cleric or a paladin. Also, the paladin isn't a priest, but it used to be like a warrior class in like older editions. And then the monk is a warrior, while a lot of monks, depending on the way you see it, a lot of monks are in like this monastery that actually believes in like a greater deity that gives them the key powers and everything. So there's a lot of overlap in here. And with these groupings, what it does is, for me, like, this is open to interpretation, but for me, what it does, it simplifies everything. But it's really hard to group certain classes into certain groups, like especially like the priest and the warrior. Like, for some people, the paladin should be a warrior because they don't really need a deity to believe in. All they need is like their oath or whatever. For some people, the druid is more like a mage, and for some people, the warlock is absolutely no mage. They are more priest than the druid is a priest, because a warlock actually actually believes in a greater deity. It's not personal, it's not exactly a deity, but it's like a greater being that gives them their powers. So they worship that entity, that great beast or whatever, and that gives them their powers. So in a way, they are more priests to many people than druids are. Now, this is just a way to look at it, and it just really depends on how Wizards of the Coast is going to write the lore around all of this, or rewrite the lore around all of this. Next, I want to talk about two feats that are a little bit rewritten that I don't really like, especially the first one, Dual Wielder. Now, dual wielding in 5th edition has never been like the best option. I really like it personally, and there are ways to play a legit dual wielder that's really awesome. You can dish out a lot of attacks and everything, and the dual wielding feat used to be a good feat, but not like really a good feat. But they actually screwed it up now. First of all, it's a 4th level feat, so you can't even take it on 1st level. It's a 4th level feat, and I don't see anybody taking this at 4th level, anybody dual wielding taking this at 4th level. So what it does is you need proficiency with any martial weapon, blah blah blah, ability score increase of dexterity to a maximum of 20, and then enhanced dual wielding. When you are holding a weapon with a light property in one hand, you can treat a non-light weapon in your other hand, such as, for example, a battle axe, as if it had a light property, provided that weapon lacks the two-handed property, right? So that's already changed. It used to be worded in a way that you could hold 2 heavy weapons as if they were light weapons, dealing out the damage of heavy weapons, but you can hold both of them because you are a badass dual wielder, so dishing out a little bit more damage. But now you can only use 1 light weapon, because when you have a light weapon in your hand, it needs to have the light weapon property, and then you can take 1 heavy weapon in the other hand and give it the light property, basically. So now you have a light and a heavy weapon, which is cool. It can look really cool, because you see this a lot like in movies and shows like Vikings and everything, with like 1 small axe and a big axe, or somebody holding a sword and then an axe in the other hand, or whatever. So it's really cool, but it's just worse. Then there's the quick draw. Like, nobody really cares about that, if, to be honest, especially on my table. And a lot of tables I see people really ignoring, like the draw weapon rule. But you can draw or stow 2 weapons that lack the two-handed property when you would normally be able to draw or stow 1. So normally, as part of your attack action, you can draw a sword, if I'm not mistaken, and then attack. But normally you can only do like draw only 1 weapon. But with this feat, you can draw 2 of them. But I always grant that to people who hold 2 weapons, because it just makes sense that somebody who's trained in dual wielding can just take 2 weapons at the same time. So there is another feature, and that's the +1 armor class. I don't know if they forgot about this or whatever, but it used to be the enhanced dual wielding was 2 heavy weapons, the quick draw was just a thing, and it would add 1 armor class to your armor class. So dual wielding, being specialized in dual wielding, would actually give you 1 extra armor class. So because you would be able like to parry or whatever. If you, I don't know, Floki and Vikings is really good at that. He gets like swords swung at his face, and he just deflects it with 1 axe and hits the guy in the face with the other axe, which is really cool. But it's not there now. So it's just not there. And it's a 4th level feat. I don't know what they're thinking for doing something like that, but I really don't like it. Especially, I like to play dual wielders a lot. Then there is one of my favorite feats that I actually never took. I mostly play fighters, and my fighters never have a high charisma, but there is this feat, Inspiring Leader, right? You are adept at encouraging others, granting you the following benefits. You get an ability and score increase of charisma or wisdom, maximum of 20, and then encouraging performance. At the end of a short rest or a long rest, you can give an inspiring performance, a speech, a song, or a dance, whatever. When you do so, choose up to 6 friendly creatures, which can include yourself, within 30 feet of you who witness the performance. The chosen creatures each gain temporary hit points equal to 2d4 plus your proficiency bonus. Now, there's a thing that I like about this, and there's a thing that I dislike about this. The thing that I like about this is that it isn't based on your charisma anymore. Granted, you still need to have 13 or higher charisma to be able to do this, but that just makes sense. But you don't need to pump a lot of points into charisma to make sense for example, your fighter to take this. At level 4, your fighter could take this to really help out the party. I like playing those fighters that have like that leadership ability. For example, the Purple Dragon Knight revised from the Children of the Dragon book by Niels Peter de Jong. Really cool Purple Dragon Knight. I love playing that class. I love playing that type of fighter, but I never took this feat because to min-max it, I need to pump a lot of points in charisma, and I'm just not willing to do that because I need dex or strength or constitution to survive, right? Now it's 2d4 plus your proficiency bonus. It still says you need a bit of charisma to be able to do it. But other than that, it's 2d4 plus your proficiency bonus. So in tier 2, it's going to be mathematically kinda the same on average of temporary hit points that you'll be able to deal out, but in the higher levels, it's going to be way less. So that's the thing that I dislike about this. I just think the dice aren't high enough. I think 2d4 is just not high enough. I think it should be I don't know, it should be, 2d6 or whatever, or I don't know, 2d4, like a d12 or a d10, I don't know, it should be more than 2d4, because 2d4 is just not enough in my book, especially on the higher levels. Now, that said, on tier 1 and tier 2 is where a feat like Inspiring Leader is really, really, really important. Like 5 temporary hit points is really important in the first tier, way more than it is in tier 3 or tier 4. But I like Wizards of the Coast rewriting this more as like if you have enough charisma, but you're a good fighter and you're a party leader or whatever, you are able to do this, which absolutely makes sense in my book. Just the dice, the numbers need to be just a little bit higher. And that's basically all I wanted to say about those comments you gave on my previous video, and a few feats that I looked into deeper, and I just noticed that they kind of changed it, some for the better, some for the worse. But I really like the way Wizards of the Coast is looking at this and approaching this. They aren't yet making the right decisions everywhere, and that is why it is a playtest, and that is why, again, please fill in the survey once it goes live, and if you are an admin, fill it in twice. Thank you so much, Frederick, for giving me that joke on my Discord channel. I really like that. So until next video, bye-bye.